The Case of Nicol, Season 1. Written by Cornell L.H. Narrated by Adam Whitty. Episode 3. The Truth About Nicol. 10th of June. Price woke up on his sofa with all the paperwork on the table. He looked at the time and jumped up straight away. It was 10 to 7 in the morning, so he had to get ready. He had a quick shower, dressed, scooped up the files from the front room, and left in a rush. He was expected at the superintendent's office at 8 o'clock, and the London traffic wasn't on his side this time. After all, he made it on time. By 7:55, he was waiting outside his boss's door. He was there before the superintendent himself. After a couple of minutes, Superintendent Sarbjit Singh arrived with Detective Hawkins. The three of them entered the office. Superintendent Singh sat in his chair and offered a seat for the two inspectors. He quickly gathered his thoughts and began to talk. "Gentlemen, you are two of my best detectives. Therefore, I expect you to rapidly upper hand this stalker. Normally, I would not have this conversation, but Detective Price made the paper thanks to this incident in the hospital. It's only a small article on page 5, but I don't want it to make the front page. So please, gentlemen, you can't let it happen." "Yes, sir," the two detectives answered, almost simultaneously. "Thank you, gentlemen," the superintendent said. "Now you may leave." Price and Hawkins left the office and went to Price's desk. Price briefed his new partner about the case, but he hasn't told him about his theory regarding the stalker yet. Before he could have come up with that, he had to make sure Nicol fit the victimology of the serial killer. According to that, Price had to keep his partner on a sidetrack, so he told Hawkins to check out the CCTV footage from the hospital and study the letter while talking to Nicol's parents. Price arrived at Sunningdale around 10 a.m. Nicol's father was waiting for him in the front garden of the lovely cottage, which seemed clean and well looked after. The detective parked his car on the driveway and approached the gate. "Good morning, sir. I'm Detective David Price." He introduced himself while showing his ID to the middle-aged gentleman in front of him. The man pushed up his glasses on his nose to look at Price's credentials. "Good morning," he greeted the young detective. "I'm Andy, Nicol's dad. Please come inside. My wife is waiting for us in the front room." Nicol's father led the way. In the living room, Nicol's mother was sitting on the sofa. When her husband and their guests stepped into the room, she stood up to greet them. "Well, Detective," Andy spoke first, "this is my wife, Carol, Nicol's mother." "Nice to meet you, sir," she said. "Please take a seat." After settling, the young inspector told Carol and Andy about their daughter's case. He explained that she was well, but they couldn't contact each other for everyone's safety. Nicol's parents patiently listened to Price, sitting there hand in hand. When the inspector finished, silence set its heavy foot in the room for a minute. Andy and his wife were speechless, but their face showed all the emotions: fear, confusion, anger. Price tried to comfort them once more. "As I said, your daughter is safe, with well-trained police officers guarding her around the clock. In the meantime, you can help the investigation by letting me know if you know anyone who held a grudge against Nicol, someone obsessed with her. Anything unusual you can remember could help, even if it doesn't seem important. Any minor detail could be a vital clue for us." Nicol's parents couldn't give any new information to the young detective, but Price had one more question: the mystery regarding Nicol's birth. "Sir, madam, I have one last thing I have to ask you. It is about your daughter's birth." "What is there to discuss?" Carol asked, surprised by the subject. "Well, madam, during Nicol's background check, I learned her date and place of birth." Price stopped for a moment, took a deep breath, and continued. "However, there is no record of you ever being admitted to that or any other hospital to give birth. I do not intend to be mean and will keep your secret, but I must know if it's true. Was Nicol adopted? Once again, Carol and Andy fell quiet. They looked at one another as they asked what we should say. After being frozen like that for a moment, Carol looked at the young detective. As you said, you would keep our secret, is that right? Andy suddenly looked at her with an expression, asking, Are you sure? Without words. Yes, I would indeed. I can promise that to you, Price replied instantly. Very well. Nicol's mother sighed. It is true, sir. We adopted her and made sure there was no trace of it, so she would never come to know. If you don't mind me asking, why don't you want her to know that? It's about her real mother. Andy took charge of the talking. She was a fanatically religious person, and during the pregnancy, her mind got disturbed. Her husband left her, and she fell pregnant. Nicol's birth mother took it so badly that one time, the poor soul tried to take her own life to kill her unborn child. In her head, she thought Nicol was going to be evil. She had to be bound to a bed, and after she brought our daughter into this world, she got sent to a psychiatric hospital. So you can understand, detective, we would never want her to know that her mother wanted her dead before she was born. That is all I can tell you. I understand completely, sir, Price stated. I can assure you that I will keep this between us. I truly appreciate your honesty. I have nothing more to ask, and I don't want to disturb you any longer than necessary. Therefore, if you forgive me, I must return to my station. Oh, of course, detective, Carol answered. But you remember, our Nicol can never know what we have told you today. She needs no more suffering. She's been through enough already. Yes, madam. Price nodded. Thank you for your hospitality. He added, just in case you would like to contact me, here is my number. Then Price placed his card on the table before leaving. On the drive back to London, Price was gathering his thoughts. He turned off the radio and began thinking about how to carry on from this point. He had confirmation that Nicol was adopted, but he knew there was another common denominator, and if Nicol had fitted that last criterion, Price would only have shared all his information with his partner and superiors. He did not want to seem obsessed with that case, because people were already whispering about him behind his back, so he needed absolute certainty. If Nicol's stalker is the same person as the killer from Price's past, that could lead to things the young detective may not be ready to do. In any case, Price knew that Andy had something more to hide. When he finished talking about the circumstances of Nicol's adoption and said, "That's all I can tell you," he turned away, and his body language suggested that there was something else, something that Carol, his wife, didn't know. At the yard, Detective Hawkins had some news for Price on arrival. Since the hospital sent over the whole day's video recordings, Hawkins could trace the suspect's movement before and after the encounter with Price. It was already 1 o'clock in the afternoon, so Hawkins suggested having lunch, during which he would reveal all the details. They went to a cafe near the yard and sat in a corner booth, giving them some privacy. Price ordered a daily special, and Hawkins asked for an all-day breakfast with extra bacon. When the waiter left the table, Hawkins got to the point straight away. "So here's what I found," he began. "The suspect came out of Royal Oak Station at 7:21 p.m. and approached the hospital on foot. He entered the hospital's north side." At this moment, Hawkins had to stop, because the waiter arrived with their water. "So he came in through the A&E," Hawkins continued, "at 7:33 p.m. You entered the hospital through the car park on the south side at 7:35 p.m. You both arrived at Mrs. Dallas's ward at the same time. Then you had your chase, and once he knocked you down, he left the hospital the same way, via the A&E, but he went to Edgware Station and got on a Bakerloo line train at 7:47 p.m. That is all the info I gathered with the CCTV access I managed to get. This guy is unreal. His face didn't show on any of the cameras, not for a single frame. It won't be a walk in the park to get this guy." "On that, we agree for sure," Price said. "So you read the case file. What do you think about the suspect?" Price asked. "He is well organised," Hawkins began. "Judging by his letter, he is intelligent and mission-oriented. Besides that, he has a mental disorder, due to which he believes that killing his victim will save millions of lives. According to what we know from the victim's office attack, we're looking for a man in his mid-30s to early 40s. He could have served in the military before, maybe has been institutionalised." "What makes you think this geezer is ex-military?" Price threw in the question. "How the rope got fixed with a quick draw under the windowsill," Hawkins replied instantly. "But you already knew that," he said, looking at Price with a cheeky smile. "So what did you manage to find out about the parents?" Price took a big sip of his water. Then he paused for a second and decided to tell his partner what he came to know. "I'm glad you've asked," he started his answer. "Well, Nicol Dallas was adopted, and she doesn't know it." "That is interesting," Hawkins said, like he was thinking out loud. "Oh, yes, indeed," Price agreed as he sat back. Their food had arrived at the same time. Both men dug in, but Hawkins could not stop himself from asking Price. "Do you have a theory, partner? You look like a man with a theory to me," he joked. "Come on, share it. We're on the same team now." Price stopped eating and looked up at Hawkins while taking a deep breath. At this point, he had no choice. He had to tell about the possible connection between Nicol's stalker and the killer in his unsolved case. After all, this man in front of him was here to help, and Price wanted to use all the help he could get to bring this murderer to justice. "Okay," he began, "but you can't put it in your report yet." "That's fine, and it's only a theory, as I mentioned," Hawkins reacted. "We don't have to report anything that we are not certain of, do we?" "All right then," Price continued. "I had a case last year. 4 female victims of the same age. More specifically, had the same date of birth, year, month, and day matching. Also, they were all adopted. And there was one more thing in common, and something that never got mentioned in the official report to preserve the victim's dignity. All the victims used to be escorts. I've tried everything, but I never caught the bastard. But guess what? Our current victim, Nicol Dallas, has the same date of birth." "And she was adopted too," Hawkins interjected. "Exactly. I think this stalker is the same suspect who killed those girls. An intelligent, organised man who seems to be on a mission. And his mission is to kill these women for some twisted reason. So I think it's very likely that the 2 cases are one." "I've heard about that old case," Hawkins explained. "I didn't want to bring it up. I knew it went cold, and it was a setback for you as a young prospect." Then he looked at Price, who was getting a little uncomfortable with the subject. "Anyway, forget about that. Let's say you were right. These women had 3 things in common. Same birthday, all adopted, and being involved in prostitution. Nicol Dallas, if it's only the first 2. What about the third one?" "I guess we're going to have to find out," Price said, after swallowing a mouthful of his food. "But I don't know how to go about it. Her financial records and employment history don't indicate anything like that, past or present, and asking her right now is not the best idea." "What if you found another way to prove it is the same guy?" Hawkins suggested. "Like how?" Price answered with a question. "We have CCTV footage of our suspect. Do you have anything like that from your old case?" "No, I don't. Those victims were dead for about 36 hours before their discovery. I had CCTV recordings from their areas from the day before their discovery, but I didn't find anything." "Do you still have the footage?" Hawkins asked. "Yes, I do. Why?" Price looked back at his partner curiously. "I have a tech guy who owes me a favour, specialising in analysing video footage. Let's ask him to run yours through his programs and see what he finds. What do you say, partner? Price had seen the potential in his new partner's approach, so he agreed. The two men quickly finished their lunch and headed back to the yard to get the CCTV records from Price's unsolved murders and the one from the hospital. At the yard, they went to Price's desk and copied all the footage on a USB key. Price handed it to Hawkins, and the two men rushed to the technical analyst's office, with Hawkins leading the way. A few minutes later, they arrived at an office in the corner of the basement level. It seemed like a place that the bosses upstairs forgot about. Hawkins knocked on the door and opened it without waiting for an answer. "Hey, William," he called out for the office's occupant. This place had no windows. On one side of it were shelves full of computer hardware, with small green and red lights flickering on them. On the opposite wall was a desk with 3 computer screens and a man in front of them. He wasn't looking like the stereotypical tech guy at all. He was a 6-foot-tall, bold, muscle giant. He removed his headphones as the 2 unexpected visitors entered his workspace without invitation. "Not you again," William addressed Hawkins without greeting anyone or standing up. "Don't tell me you need another favour." "Come on, mate. Is that how you treat a friend?" Hawkins reacted. "I have something serious here, you know, and I know you are going to help." "How could you be so sure?" William asked. "Because unless I get an order from upstairs to help you, I won't move a finger." Then he looked at Price. "I'm sorry he dragged you down here for nothing, but—" "Wait with that." Hawkins intervened, and he placed the USB key in front of William. "On these CCTV footages, there is a suspect who is killing women," he continued. "This mug has already killed 4 and is now stalking a 5th. We need your help to catch him, mate. I promise I will leave you alone after this. Just help me one last time, please." William looked at the small data carrier and took a deep breath. He looked at Price. "Is it true? Does this guy hurt women?" he asked. "Yes," Price replied. "I've been chasing him since last year, and what Detective Hawkins says is true. We need your help to put him behind bars. We can't let him take another life." "Okay, I will help, and I will do it for the girls and you, not for him," William said, pointing at Hawkins. "You look like a good guy. Plus, I can't stand violence against women. So what do you want me to do?" "There are 5 CCTV recordings on that thing," Price explained while pointing at the USB key. "They are all dated. There is a suspect I'm trying to catch wearing black clothes and a hood on the latest recording. We would like to know if he appears in the other 4 footages." "How long are the recordings?" "How long are the recordings?" "How long are the recordings?" William asked. "The first is about 20 minutes. The other 4 are about 24 hours each," Price answered. "That's why we need your magic, mate." Hawkins spoke again. "I knew you were the man." "Oh, stop it already," William hushed him. "I'm going to need some time, but as soon as I have something, I will give Detective Inspector Hawkins a call," he said with a bit of sarcasm. "Thank you," Price said, as he held his hand to shake William's. The 2 men shook hands, and then Price and Hawkins left. As they returned to their section, Price could not stop thinking about discovering more about Nicol's past. Driven by this ambition, he suggested they call some of Nicol's friends to arrange interviews. Hawkins was on the same page. This new case on a plate now raised his interest, and he liked his new partner. While the 2 detectives were researching, Nicol and Jason and the police officers protected them had just finished lunch. Jason washed up the dishes while the 2 cops were outside having a smoke. Nicol was sitting on the sofa. She didn't seem frightened anymore, but Jason felt something had changed. He knew what she had experienced the last few days would change her forever, and yet he hoped it wouldn't be fundamental. After finishing the cleaning, Jason walked up to Nicol. She was sitting there, hugging her knees in front of her chest. "Do you want to talk about it?" Jason threw up a question while sitting down. "About what?" Nicol asked quietly, spinning the ball back to him. "About your sleepwalk last night. Were you having a nightmare again?" I can't remember," she said. "I only remember waking up screaming. I can't remember the dream." "You were talking too." "Was I?" "Yes, but I couldn't understand it," Jason said and sat closer to her. "If there is anything you want to talk about, I'm here." He continued while he tried to cuddle up to Nicol. She rolled out of her husband's hugs. "I'm okay," she replied, staring straight at the television. "It was probably the stress. I will be fine." Jason sat there for a moment. His world began to collapse as the love of his life just rejected his comforting arms. He stood up and walked out to the garden. He just stood outside, gazing into the distance, thinking about the sweet memories with Nicol. He stayed there for a while, and his sorrow slowly turned into anger as storm clouds conquered the summer sky, the first of a series of storms that the weather forecast foretold a few days before. Jason went back inside. He opened a bottle of wine and sat on the other side of the sofa, where Nicol was seated the same way he had left her. Meanwhile, Hawkins and Price called dozens of Nicol's friends as the afternoon turned into evening. One of them, Rose Nunez, from her years of university studies, agreed to talk. She was from Southend-on-Sea, about an hour's drive away from London. Hawkins arranged a meeting with her for the next day at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Sadly, the detectives found no one else willing to talk, but Price was glad that at least one of them said yes. Around 6 p.m, the two men wrote their reports and packed up to leave. On his way out, Price's phone started to ring. He didn't recognise the number, so he answered to find out who it could be. To his surprise, it was Nicol's father. He wanted to come to the station because he needed to talk alone with Price. He said there was something else he didn't tell. He couldn't speak with his wife in the room. There was something about Nicol's birth mother that Andy kept a secret from Carol. Price told him to come in at 11 if he could. He agreed, and they hung up the phone. Price hoped the information they could get from the two interviews the next day would bring this case closer to a satisfying end. He also rang Hawkins to let him know what had just happened. The second he finished his phone conversation with his partner, Price ran into Michael. "You all right, mate?" Michael greeted his colleague. "Yeah, thanks for asking," Price replied. "How are Jason and Nicol? I've heard you have them in a safe location, and the bosses gave you a new partner." "Yes, I had to do that," Price began to explain. "The suspect tried to attack Mrs. Dallas at St. Mary's. The bastard managed to crack my nose during his getaway. I guess that's why the partner." "Oh, God. That guy's not a joke. Any leads?" "Nothing major yet, but tomorrow we have some promising interviews." "Sounds good, Tiger," Michael said with a half-smile. "That means progress. I know you can handle this and help my friends. I will be in your debt forever if you catch this guy." "I'll quote you on that," Price joked. "But if you don't mind, I've got to go and have some rest." "Oh yeah, of course. I have to go and pick up my shift anyway," Michael replied, and the two said bye to each other. Then Price headed home, and his mobile rang once again on the way. It was Hawkins calling about the results from his friend, the technical analyst. "Hey, partner," he said. "I've got something for you. William told me he didn't find a match for the current suspect in your old CCTV footage. However, he found the same black car parked outside all four victims' houses. It's a black BMW, and Mrs. Dallas said something about a black car. And it's not all," Hawkins continued. "William already ran the plate, and it's registered to a guy named Minotauro Crocop." "He could be our guy." Price reacted as his pulse got higher, but Hawkins got him back to earth. Sorry to disappoint, but the guy has been dead for almost 2 years. It's still a lead, Price said, with bitterness in. That is correct, Hawkins confirmed. I think we're on the right track, my friend. Anyway, get some shut-eye. I'll see you tomorrow. Then he hung up the phone before Price could have said anything. That name Hawkins mentioned was echoing in Price's mind. He felt like he had heard it somewhere before. Minotauro Crocop. He could not remember how he came across that name. Being bothered by this thought, he started to go through all his files connected to his ongoing investigation. He read them once, twice, and once more, but nothing. That name wasn't in any of them. He got a little frustrated that the CCTV footage was a dead end. He threw the file to the table and laid back on his sofa, rubbing his tired eyes. The young detective couldn't help but think that he would run out of options if the interviews left him with no new clues. As he was sitting there, Price realised that hours went by. It was already past 11 o'clock, so he decided to catch some sleep. By this time, Jason and Nicol were asleep in Bagshot. Nicol had the same dream as last night. She was enjoying that great warmth spreading out in her body. This time, Nicol realised her body was levitating in this bright light. After a while, she felt that invisible force grabbing her, just like last time, but now Nicol didn't want to leave this place, so she fought back. She reached out and felt like her hand went around somebody's neck. Nicol focused on all the power she was gaining from this white light that surrounded her and started strangling her transparent attacker. The 2 new police officers were in the kitchen, chatting about football. They took over their shift as the guards of Nicol and Jason at 6. They heard about a loud noise coming from Nicol and Jason's bedroom. They rushed upstairs, with their weapons drawn. One shouted out, "This is the Metropolitan Police. We are coming in," and kicked in the door. When they stepped inside the room, they couldn't believe what was happening in front of their eyes. Nicol, this fragile woman, was holding Jason up against the wall by his neck. His toes barely touched the ground, and he was gasping for air. Jason was using both hands to break Nicol's grip, but couldn't. Nicol was in an apparent sleepwalking state again, and she kept chanting something, just as last time. The 2 policemen stood still for a few seconds, struck by surprise. Then one of them went behind Nicol and picked her up while he shouted, "Stop it, Mrs. Dallas." Waking up in a stranger's arms, Nicol started to scream and shout, "Put me down!" The officer instantly clicked that she was awake, so he let go of her. She pushed the policeman away and looked around, confused. Nicol saw her husband sitting at the wall, trying to catch his breath, and looked back at her, terrified. "What happened?" she asked. "What the hell just happened?" She repeated a little louder, almost crying. One of the officers picked up a blanket from the bed and placed it on Nicol. "Come, Mrs. Dallas, let's take a seat downstairs first," he said to her and escorted her to the front room. His partner went to Jason's aid at the same time. "Are you okay, sir?" he asked Jason. "Just take a seat here on the bed." "I will be fine," Jason said. "Let me see how my wife is." Then he went to follow his wife downstairs. Jason sat on the sofa next to Nicol. He looked at her, and with great concern in his voice, he asked, "Are you okay, babe? Was it another nightmare?" "I'm good," she answered. "I can't remember my dream. I only remember waking up being carried by a stranger." "So you don't remember anything else, madam?" one of the policemen asked. "No, why?" Nicol looked at the officer. "Well, babe," Jason started to speak, "you were sleepwalking again, and when I tried to snap you out of it, you pushed me against the wall and..." "And what?" she asked with fear in her eyes. "You started to choke me," Jason continued. "You were gripping my neck so tight that I struggled to fight it off. It felt like you wanted to kill me." "I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to hurt you," Nicol said. I must have had a nightmare, as you were saying. She looked shocked. Nicol never had to fight in her life, and now she's attacked her husband. It was probably the adrenaline rush that gave you strength, one of the officers explained. You must have been terrified in your dream, madam. Are you sure you can't remember anything from it? No, she answered. I've told you before. It's okay, Jason intervened. It's the stress. It's normal. I guess when some psychopath is trying to kill you, he was trying to say with a sarcastic tone, looking at the curious officer. Could you give us some space here, please? We're all good now. The two policemen went to the kitchen to give them some privacy. Jason turned the lights down and made another attempt to talk to his love. Besides all his efforts, Nicol was passive. She just turned on the TV and started to surf aimlessly along the channels. Jason wasn't giving up on her. His energy got drained, so he drifted into sleep after a while.
Hello there, guys. Thank you very much for tuning in again. If you did like the story so far, please don't forget to like and subscribe and leave a comment and interact with the channel in any way to help us out. Once again, thank you very much for your attention. I hope you like the story so far. I'll see you with the next episode. Peace out.